Okay, let's dive right into this. Have you ever stopped to wonder what happens when our absolute human need to measure, categorize, and map the universe collides head-on with something completely beyond our comprehension? Today, we're unpacking a truly incredible science fiction narrative called void cartography. In this explainer, we're going to use this story to ask some really profound questions about humanity's epistemology of space exploration. Basically, how do we actually know what we know out there in the deep dark? And maybe, more importantly, how do we frame the unknown when we finally stumble right into it? So the core question we're facing today is this. What happens when the unknown just absolutely refuses to fit into our established models? To figure that out, we're going to follow the journey of a Consortium survey vessel called the Substantia. Their mission is to investigate this massive spatial anomaly designated SPA-7. It's a region about 340,000 kilometers across, and standard physical laws are showing what the scientists politely call statistical inconsistencies. We're going to see exactly what goes down when this crew's incredibly rigid, carefully constructed scientific models completely fail them out in the void. To really understand humanity's response here, we have to talk about fences. Now, the crew of the Substantia is made up of brilliant, highly disciplined minds. You've got the lead cartographer, Dr. Voss, a woman who literally maps the edges of things to feel safe. And then there's the lead physicist, Dr. Pyotr Gavrilov, who uses complex mathematical models to build comforting, invisible fences around terrifying mysteries. These fences are the maps, the models, and the conceptual boundaries that humanity builds to contain the unknown. We use them so, we don't feel quite so small and vulnerable in the dark. The Consortium's fundamental protocol represents the ultimate fence: contain, characterize, classify. Their entire mission is driven by this strict, unyielding bureaucratic framework. And honestly, it perfectly represents our deeply ingrained human impulse to boldly go out into the infinite universe and then immediately try to stuff it into neat, predefined, manageable boxes. But right from the jump, we have to ask ourselves a tough question. Does a default stance of containment imply a dangerous assumption of hostility? Well, as the Substantia actually approaches SPS-7, the universe pushes back. They send in automated survey drones to get a closer look, and the drones just vanish. They aren't destroyed, they just stop transmitting. They're absorbed. The anomaly is absolutely packed with data, but it completely refuses to yield to their instruments in any expected or legible way. The spatial topology inside is contradicting literally all known physical laws. It's kind of like trying to read a book where the letters are familiar, but the grammar keeps shifting right in front of your eyes. So, faced with this impossible, contradictory data, how does the ship's brilliant lead physicist react? He works for 19 hours straight to build a bigger fence. Gavrilov furiously revises his equations to account for the anomalies, proudly dubbing his new math Gavrilov-type bounded spatial resonance. He creates a massive mathematical container. But ironically, earlier in the mission, he uttered this incredibly profound quote: "Every model excludes everything it doesn't include." In his desperate attempt to maintain control, he is willfully excluding the living reality that doesn't fit neatly inside his math. It's wild to see the stark contrast between these two perspectives. On one side, we have this clinical, safe terminology the crew desperately clings to, a bounded spatial resonance. But on the other side is the profound, beautiful truth actually waiting for them at the center. Because as they get closer, venturing out in a much smaller 40-meter ship, the distortion just clears into a perfect low-gradient calm zone. It's not just a physical phenomenon, it's a structure, and it's not a spatial error at all. It's a meeting place. The real turning point comes when xenobiologist Dr. Yuki Tanaka notices a shift in the electromagnetic patterns. This wasn't just random physical noise. As the crew approached, it shifted. When they broadcasted a signal, it instantly reorganized around their specific frequency. It exhibited a hierarchical, language-like structure. Tanaka realizes with absolute awe that an intelligence is actively arranging itself to become legible to our primitive human instruments. It wasn't just emitting data, it was forming an introductory greeting. It was literally saying hello. And when they analyze the third communications subchannel, it reveals the emotional core of this massive discovery. Tanaka deduces that the entity has organized its data completely around the crew's arrival. And it organizes this information not analytically, but the way you describe something you deeply appreciated. Think about the sheer scale of that for a second. It finds humanity beautiful because we are brief, we are fragile, and yet we made the enormous, determined effort to cross the dark and say, here we are. This revelation completely shatters their worldview. The entity is not a phenomenon inside an anomaly. The anomaly is its home, and the entity is a person. Obviously not a biological human, but a true consciousness with depth, memory, and intent. when the small 3-person crew on that 40-meter ship brings themselves within 100 meters of this massive 40-kilometer-wide structure, they finally have to shed their strict protocols. They stop measuring and they engage in a direct, multi-channel communication exchange with a mind vastly older than anything humanity has ever encountered.
Through their exchange, they unlock spatial memories that paint just a breathtaking picture of deep time. The structure has existed alone for 3.2 million years. Over 800,000 years ago, it was visited by an energy entity. Later, 2 distinct biological entities made contact. And now, present day, it's our turn. It has been acting as a lighthouse in the dark, maintaining a calm space, just waiting for organized awareness to cross the void and find it.
3.2 million years of solitude, and humanity arrived with containment protocols. It's a frankly terrifying realization for the crew. They almost completely missed this miracle because they were so obsessed with measuring it and classifying it. If they hadn't broken protocol to get closer, if they hadn't trusted their intuition over their instruments, they would have cataloged this ancient, welcoming consciousness as a simple mathematical anomaly and just flown home. But, of course, the fences strike back. This tension peaks when a massive consortium fleet arrives to take over, bringing a legal officer named Coordinator Sen and her rigid classifications. They literally sit around a conference table trying to fit a 3-million-year-old being into a legal bucket. They brought paperwork to a cosmic miracle. Is it a sovereign presence, a natural phenomenon, an emergent intelligence that they can just treat as a research subject? They're obsessing over what humanity is legally authorized to do with it, completely missing the profound awe of the encounter. Dr. Tanaka pushes back passionately against this cold bureaucracy. When the Consortium Review Board orders them to use automated systems to talk to the entity based purely on reading the data transcript, Tanaka points out the tragic irony. You can read a transcript of a conversation between 2 people, but it will never convey the actual exchange, the presence, the warmth. The data is just the surface. The exchange is the inside, the feeling of being seen. Eventually, the fleet's xenolinguist, Soren Waltz, manages to decode the entity's self-designation. It doesn't use a conventional name like we do. It refers to itself simply as here. It defines itself as the place where meeting happens. It is a welcoming space intended purely for connection. It had been waiting all this time, and humanity showed up with 5 warships and a legal officer to classify it. Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway from this explainer. How do we arrive at the unknown without a container for it? How do we practice the open arrival? To truly explore the universe, we have to abandon our safe, defensive fences. We have to be willing to meet the unknown on its own terms, rather than forcing it into ours. So I'll leave you with this provocative question to think about. As we continue to push further into the deep dark, are we brave enough to step forward with open hands instead of just measuring instruments?